All right, let's talk about what it really takes to succeed in the long run. We're going to go way beyond simple motivation and look at the actual architecture of achievement, the deep principles of strategic endurance, the crucial difference between grit and self-control, and why discipline, well, discipline is the master key to it all. So, where do we even begin? Well, how about we look at what some of the world's most successful investors, people who manage billions and navigate just incredible uncertainty, all have in common. You'd think there'd be a dozen different complex answers, but it turns out one single theme keeps coming up. First up, Warren Buffett. He's crystal clear about this. He says success in his world isn't really about being a genius. It's about having an extraordinary amount of discipline. He's making a huge distinction between raw intelligence and the consistent day-in, day-out application of a solid framework.
Then you've got Stanley Druckenmiller, and he does not mince words. He takes it a step further, calling it ruthless discipline. Now that implies something really powerful, an uncompromising, almost hardcore commitment to your strategy, especially when it's emotionally tough to do so.
And George Soros, well, he connects the dots for us. He draws this direct, unmissable line between taking huge risks and the absolute necessity of discipline. The bigger the risk, he's saying, the tighter your process needs to be. It's like a safety harness that lets you operate right on the edge without falling off.
Okay, so let's just let that sink in. When you comb through the wisdom of people at the absolute pinnacle of their fields, this is the one word you hear again and again and again: discipline. It's the common denominator. It's the bedrock that all lasting achievement is built on.
But what does discipline really mean in practice? I mean, the word gets thrown around a lot, right? To truly get it, we need to break it down into two related but really distinct components that people often get mixed up: grit and self-control.
So, first let's look at self-control. Psychologist Angela Duckworth and James Gross define this as your moment-to-moment defense system. Think of it as your shield against those hourly temptations. You know, the urge to check your phone instead of working, or grabbing the donut instead of the apple. It's a short-term battle.
And then there's grit. Now, grit operates on a completely different timescale. This is your long-term engine. This is that tenacious, unwavering pursuit of one single, dominant, high-level goal over years or maybe even decades, through all the failures and all the setbacks you're going to face along the way.
So this is the crucial point. Self-control and grit are not the same thing. Look at how this breaks down. Self-control fights temptation hour by hour for any goal you have. That leads to everyday success. But grit fights setbacks and disappointment over decades in service of a single passionate goal. And that is what leads to extraordinary achievement. Put it this way: self-control helps you win the battle, grit helps you win the war. Now check this out. This visual really helps make sense of self-control. You see that main path? That's your long-term goal. But then this other, more tempting thing pops up and creates a conflict, right at the action level. Self-control is the little hero that steps in and resolves that immediate conflict, keeping you on the right path.
And this just brilliantly shows how grit operates at a much, much higher altitude. It's all about maintaining allegiance to that top-level superordinate goal. It defends your entire life's mission against other potential life missions. And look at the bottom part. When a path gets blocked, grit doesn't give up. It generates new, lower-level goals to find another way through. It's all about strategic resilience.
Okay, so we get the theory, but how do we actually install this disciplined operating system into our lives? This brings us to a really crucial and honestly kind of counterintuitive idea about how discipline really works day to day.
Former Navy SEAL Commander Jocko Willink offers this fantastic reframe that might seem totally paradoxical at first. He argues that discipline isn't a prison that restricts you. Nope, it's the very thing that creates more freedom in your life.
And that's the key question, isn't it? It feels like rules and routines would just limit our options. But the secret isn't about having more willpower. It's about having better structure. So how does that work in the real world?
Well, as James Clear explains in his amazing book Atomic Habits, the most disciplined people aren't necessarily masters of willpower, they are masters of their environment. Look at this simple example. Instead of fighting the urge to have a drink every single night, you just remove the cue. By creating a disciplined environment, you don't even have to use self-control. And that gives you freedom from a habit you didn't want in the first place.
Now we have to talk about a really critical pitfall here. Because discipline without clear direction is just
pointless activity. It is incredibly easy to fall into the trap of just being busy, mistaking motion for actual progress.
Psychologists have a name for why we do this. It's a cognitive bias called the mere urgency effect. Basically, our brains are hardwired to prioritize tasks that are time-sensitive, the ones with the flashing red deadline, even if they're completely unimportant, over the tasks that are truly important for our long-term goals.
And this leads straight to a culture of fake productivity. You know what I'm talking about. Constantly switching between emails, messages, and little tasks creates this illusion that you're getting a lot done. But what's really happening is your attention is being shredded, you're engaged in a ton of activity, but you're not achieving any depth. We get rewarded for appearing busy, not for the slow, focused, cumulative work that actually moves the needle.
So if we're armed with discipline, but we're also wary of this busyness trap, how do we apply these principles to achieve real strategic long-term success? Well, it requires zooming out, way out, from the daily firefight to look at the entire map.
Success over the long haul, true endurance, it starts by focusing on these huge, foundational questions of strategy. You have to constantly ask yourself, why are we doing this? Where are we right now, honestly? Where are we trying to go? And what's the plan to get there? This isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous, never-ending cycle.
And this brings us to a really powerful concept: strategic endurance. This isn't just about surviving. It's the ability to consistently adapt, to actually grow through a crisis, and to prosper over decades. And what's the engine of that endurance? You guessed it, relentless strategic discipline. And the mindset that fuels this is something called rational audacity. I love this phrase. It's the perfect blend of being bold and being careful. It's about having a huge, ambitious vision, but executing on it with deliberate, calculated, and highly disciplined steps. You dream big, but you protect your downside with obsessive planning.
And that brings us to the final and really the most important takeaway from all of this. The entire structure of discipline and grit and endurance, it all needs a North Star to guide it. So the question I want to leave you with is this: what is your one single, highest level, superordinate goal that gives direction and meaning to everything else you do?